Hi, Gary Jacobs here with another edition of Long Island Backstory, the news that your traditional mainstream media on Long Island don't cover. We give you the backstory and the whole story. Today, my guest is attorney Mace Greenfield, who, after a successful career in broadcasting and journalism, decided to get into lawyering. Why the heck would anybody do that after having a successful career? Well, we're going to find out today when we speak to attorney in Nassau and Suffolk, Mace Greenfield. So, Mace, you started law, I won't say later in life, but after approximately 15 years as another successful career in advertising and marketing. What made you get into law?
You know, it's a good question, Gary, and I'm glad you asked. I think you know about my background that I did on the side as Mace in Your Face on radio. And originally it was just supposed to be when I moved back to New York from Virginia, where I was awarded custody. And the judge at the end of the trial mocked me and said, you know, Mr. New Yorker, if you were back in New York and your case was 10 times better and her case was 10 times worse, in New York you would have lost. Bit my lip to keep from laughing because that's why I agreed to move to my then wife's hometown.
So you knew that?
Yes.
Okay.
I only look stupid. So came back to New York and I got hit with so many societal prejudices. Everyone thought if I had custody, my ex-wife had to be unfit. She was not. That she had to be a drug addict. She was not. That she was an alcoholic. She was not. They would just assume that I was a good dad, babysitting for a few hours so my wife could have a little time to herself. So since I had a radio background down south doing morning radio, I set up this talk show to educate the public about dads and custodial dads, and that it doesn't necessarily mean a mother is unfit, etc.
But you weren't a lawyer at the time?
Oh, no.
Okay.
No. And so then I did have problems with my ex. I needed help from the courts. And oh my God, I thought I was having problems. I didn't know what problems were until I sought help from the courts. They could not understand I had custody. They could not understand that support was paid to me. They had attitudes of, what, you got joint custody and you think you're overpaid, so you do a refund? No. But luckily, I, was always a politically involved individual, so I was able to go to make a phone call or two, and people got yelled at and screamed at for giving me these attitude problems. I was given a backdoor phone number to social services, so because it always was busy, I'm put on hold and it would, just time out, I'm disconnected. And that particular commissioner, you could tell, was very irritated. I had a direct phone number, but the county executive said, he's got one more complaint, you're having problems. So then I went to social services to fill out the petitions and the paperwork. And one of the supervisors from the back came out to make sure everything's fine, and then said, oh my God, Mace, if you were having problems, why didn't you talk to me? I said, I know you from synagogue. I didn't know you work here. Mm-hmm. It's like, oh, that's true. And he told me how there was a big departmental meeting and heads would roll if I had more complaints. So then I got into court in Nassau County, and, I could definitely tell that, things were not quite the same for me as a custodial mom, but not the horror stories anymore that others had because the warnings were given out. But then when it transferred to Suffolk County, oh my God, did they screw everything up. They went after my ex for stuff she didn't do, for risk she didn't know. Everything had been paid up by then. It was the Nassau order was paid direct. They won't accept my records. They want the court records, but the court records say pay direct. I'm the only one who would have the records. They're telling me to sit back and laugh at it like everyone else in my shoes would. And I'm like, wait a minute. Our bitterness is our business. Right. And trust me, I read the obits daily praying to find her name. But right and wrong is your business, and I swear by my death, I'll see you held to that. And just as a little aside, since then, my ex saw I wasn't looking to hurt her, and then I realized she wasn't looking to play games. We became friends. She had a baby. I was the only one she trusted to babysit. She got divorced. She came to me. It's not uncommon to find holidays, our daughter with whoever she's dating, my ex and whoever she's dating, and me and whoever I'm dating, all together as a family. So I just wanted to, I just wanted to throw that in so people know that those problems between us don't exist anymore. And probably because I wanted to do the right thing and not act on bitter emotion. And I think it's a great message to people. I don't care the problems you think you're having from the other parent or spouse. you do the right thing and eventually the other person will too. Stop the games. So anyway, I changed my radio show from educating the public to attacking the system. And everyone in my shoes before me had their lives destroyed for doing this, but everyone who did it before me lost in court. How do you anti-PR someone who won in court? Plus, I had a political background, and the people they had to go to destroy my life were my drinking buddies. So that wasn't happening either. And then they found out that there was a time where I did investigations on the system, and a lot of the investigations that people got nailed for, I was the one behind it and still doing that stuff. So, I was able to do it. But when you do something like that, you got to do it the right way, and you got to know when to stop. Because no matter what your connections are, you cross certain lines, the close of the system will come down on you. So then Judge Joseph, who was then supervising judge of Nassau County Family Court, was a regular guest on my radio show, helped me make fun of Suffolk County by saying things like, here in my county, unlike our neighbors to the east, which was pretty funny because at that time, you went to Judge Joseph and showed him in black and white that things aren't happening the right way. He would fix it.
That's
Whereas
unusual.
at that time in Suffolk, they would not.
I still don't think they will.
Presented the right way, they can.
They can.
And
I don't
I've
know if
seen
they
it done.
will. Okay. Now you have a philosophy not to spend more money litigating something than you can get in return, which would seem like common sense, but when you're going through a divorce, some people would feel, and sometimes I've felt that way, but you know what? I'm going to still fight for what's right, number one. But also number two, if I just give in and say, you know what? I'm not going to litigate this because it's not worth the money. You embolden the other person to say, well, now I can just keep going after him or her because they're going to give up. So explain that,
Okay.
that thought process.
Basically, you got to be a consumer. You don't want to cut off your nose to spite your face. And you don't do it by each individual item because the conglomerate of the items could be worth it. But a piece of property that the other person really wants and is really getting in your face and it's going to break the deal and justice says you should split it or justice says you should have it, and let's say it's worth $5,000. To go to trial is going to cost you $35,000. So if you go to trial and you win it, that everything else is the same as your settlement, and that $5,000 item now becomes yours,
Right.
you're in the whole $30,000. You're not up $5,000. That's where I do it. Now, as far as the emboldening part, that's where if you do it by each item, not that you have a whole deal and don't make not where everything else is a deal and it's one item, that's worth less than the cost to litigate. When it's each individual thing, you got to take your stand.
Right.
And then you draw it off on the aggregate of it.
Right.
And, when it comes to post-judgment stuff, constant nitpicky, no, then you have to draw a line. I'm talking about in the initial divorce proceeding.
Right.
When there's an item that can break it and you go to trial and it's going to cost you more to go to trial, then that item is worth, even if you win it, that's where you say, the hell with it, you can have it, because you're not worth all that money in
And that's
litigation.
probably one of the things that's different about you than a lot of other attorneys where they would say, hey, you want to litigate? I'll litigate it. I don't care. I'm getting paid. And I think that's one of the differences that, that you'll tell your clients, and I know this from experience that you've told other people, recommended to you, that you do tell them whether they want to hear it or not. And some people may leave and may not use it.
That's fine with me, because if they want to be silly,
and they may come back.
here's the bottom line. O.J. Simpson had multi-millions of dollars, okay? And he fought the legal system, and he's pissed broke. Nothing. Nada. He's in jail. So the average person going through a divorce doesn't have that kind of money to spend on litigation out of justice or principle or right and wrong. And trust me, one person's justice is another person's injustice, and right and wrong only exists in superhero comic books,
that was the next
not
question I
real
had.
life.
But aren't when you go to court, we're taught, and I guess we're naive, that when you go to court, you get justice. That really, a lot of cases should be black and white. This is right, this is wrong. From my experience, when you go to family court, that's not true.
Okay.
And that quote that you just said sort of...
They're not justice courts. That's a misconception. When you look at the preamble to the New York State Constitution setting up the court system, it's the administration of law. It doesn't say justice. It says for the administration of law. You got to remember that. And justice, too many people are looking for justice, vindication on all the facts and emotions that are irrelevant to the elements of the law. Because the vindication people seek doesn't exist. It ain't going to happen.
Alec Baldwin said, if you want justice, stay out of the courts.
And I got to agree with him. I've said it forever. Who wants to let someone who wears a bathrobe to work decide their life?
But you
Think about
I
it.
understand it, but you still want to think that at the end of the day, when you present your facts, the right, whatever the right is, sometimes there is a right. Sometimes one parent is better. Sometimes one parent is not better.
Let me ask you a question. Do you have siblings?
Yes.
Okay, growing up as a kid, were there times where you guys were in one room watching TV and both or one parent who's home is in the kitchen making lunch sandwiches?
Right.
And then a commotion broke out in the room where you and your siblings are? And the parent storms in and says, "What's going on in here?" And the one of you who's the true victim of the other says, and the parent looked and said, "You in the corner," right? And then turned to the others and said, "What's going on?" And one of them said, very nicely and calmly, pointing to the one that was sent to the corner, that he or she kept doing this or that and annoying us. And then, the parent believed the one who was calm in the presentation and looked at the one freaking out and said, "You to your room now." Didn't that happen
But
when
you
you
would
were a kid?
hope, you would hope facts would speak for themselves.
Listen. Facts don't speak for themselves. That's the bottom line. And that judge is the parent in the kitchen making sandwiches. And the two litigants were in that TV room where the commotion was. Because here's the deal. In that TV room where the commotion was anyone recording it? Is there any backup evidence to show for it? No. So it boils down to credibility. And that's where, not facts and substance comes in, that's where image, presentation comes in. So, in Book 4 of the Republic, Socrates says there's 4 types of people. The just man, who appears just, and everything goes his way. The unjust man, who appears unjust, nothing goes his way. But then you have the gray area. You have the unjust man who appears just, and most things go his way. And you have the just man who appears unjust, and very little goes his way. And I'll give you a great example of the just man who appears unjust. And I'm going to focus on the dad because there are too many dads just like this over the years. In the courtroom, hearing their spouse's attorney say things that they consider to be lies, going, lies. Because they want the judge to know that it's lies.
Right.
And they're right. They're upset by the lies and they're right. But once you act that way, you're every bit out of control, as your wife is saying
I've
you are.
heard judges even say that to somebody. You're proving to me that you have no self-control.
Right.
Maybe you hate your wife, too. You have no self-control.
So, again, just like Socrates said back then, it's image and presentation long before facts and substance is going to be addressed. And again, the judge is not there when this stuff happened. Is there documentation to prove it?
Right.
Not, you can see by this that must be. No, that's circumstantial. It doesn't get you anywhere. But something that, hypothetically, one spouse says the other spouse always paid all the bills in the house, and so that first spouse is clueless to the bills. And the second spouse says, no, that first spouse always did it. Get the canceled checks that shows that other spouse signed all the checks paying all the bills. Don't just say it, prove it.
But let me ask you,
Prove it.
Now they lied in court, and the woman, they go to the court and they say, "Hey, look, judge, she lied." I don't think they care.
They should. They don't do anything about perjury. However, for later on, it's when you prove many of the lies with actual documentary evidence, audio recordings, video recordings, witnesses, such as one parent says they always take the kid to school and the other parent says BS, and they get the teachers and others to come in and say, we only see that second parent.
Right.
Which reminds me of a case I had. My client took the children and picked up the children Monday through Thursday every week at school, but stayed in their car at the curb. On Friday, the other parent dropped off and picked up, but always walked to the school. Everyone in school saw that other parent, not my client. My client lost. No one saw that client.
Right.
The other parent had proof. My client didn't. So, truth and facts does not stand for itself without proof of it. Otherwise, it's just words.
It is just words.
And anyone can say anything, and the judges are used to the fact that 50% of what everyone says is a lie. Maybe from their perspective it's true, but it ain't true in reality.
But I understand. Going through court, when I went through my divorce, I said, you know what? I'm always going to tell the truth. The truth is on my side. I'm a better parent. I'm this, I'm that. I'm never going to lie because I don't want to be afraid to go to trial. My ex-wife always lied. Nothing ever happened to her. And when I got out of my divorce, I said, you know what? She did well by lying. And when I talk to other people who tell me this, I want to be honest. Sometimes I don't know if if you're fighting over your children and you're talking about losing your children, Maybe they should lie.
I totally disagree. I totally and completely disagree. And see, here's the thing. One, you got to live with yourself later and know that you took the higher road and did the right thing. Number two, there's a gender bias in the courts, and it's not as bad as it used to be, as bad as it still is. The man lies and is caught, they get screwed over in so many more ways than a woman who lies and gets caught.
Well, I agree with that.
Okay.
A woman could do 50, get caught with 50 lies. The guy makes one error or little mistruth, and that becomes the focus of the
And
whole
then
trial.
they don't believe anything of what he says about his income. He must be faking his W-2s, and they believe what the woman says because they caught that in one lie.
Well, that brings us to the million-dollar question. Is there a bias against fathers in court? Because if you read everything, they say it's gender neutral, there's no bias. I'm living it, you're living it. Is there a bias against fathers in Nassau and Suffolk County? Because that's what we're talking about, and that's what we both have experience.
More often than not, yes. Are there those individuals that are pretty close to gender neutral to look at the specifics of each case fairly? Yes. However, I do also want to say that there are too many households where, dad did let mom do the majority of everything, but now wants it half and half when he wasn't there before doing it. It's not going to work that way if she doesn't consent to it. Right. Now, I do think the laws should be presumptively that it's joint decision making for major decisions, and it's the burden of showing it shouldn't be, not the burden of showing that it should be, and that it should be look to maximize time with both parents based on their schedules.
So before there are any parenting.
Before there's any third parties. But shared parenting does not necessarily mean, for me, 50-50.
Right.
It means if one's working 30 hours a week, the other's working 90 hours a week, you set it up so that there's a maximizing time with each parent. Right. And clearly the one working 90 hours, it's not going to get as much time as the one working 30 hours.
Right. That you really understand the issue with fathers because you were one and divorced twice and fought for custody, and a lot of people go to you because of your understanding. Would you consider yourself a father's rights lawyer? And if so, what does it mean?
Okay. Technically, I guess you could say I'm a father's rights lawyer. Personally, I don't believe in father's rights, mother's rights, women's rights, civil rights. I only believe in equal rights. Knowing that, you can better understand that to me, father's rights means not a father should win because he's a father, as mother's rights advocates say, a mother should win just because she's the mother.
Right.
To me, father's rights means closing your eyes to gender, putting the facts to the law, and having the children where they should be based on the facts, not based on the gender of a parent.
Which, of course, if the law was changed to the way you suggested, which is shared parenting, that would be a moot point because both parents would share.
Right,
but it isn't right now.
Right, but the way
So
the law
there's
is
the
set up right now, it encourages litigation, it encourages lies and perjury. The majority, from my experience, the majority of domestic violence is for purposes of getting exclusive use of the house, for getting custody, not because it was real. And sadly, the majority that's real doesn't get reported, and when it does, the victim starts crying, wanting to withdraw all the charges because they really love the other person and want him to go home, just want him or her to learn they can't do those things anymore. And, it's, to me, that it's a little sick, but it's the reality.
Right.
Okay? And I do think that people who lie in the course of divorce and custody should be nailed for perjury, should be fined monetarily, should spend some time in jail, because it's going to stop then. Oh, wait, but if it stops, there's going to be less work for lawyers, less judicial seats needed, less court reporters, less court officers. To a degree, it is a cottage industry, too.
Right.
And, for things to be done right, it's not going to be as busy.
Well, having said these, so I think you clarified that you're not a father's rights attorney, but you do understand father's issues, and I know you love your daughter, and
I hate
raised her,
gender bias.
And so should a woman not go? Should a woman not go to Mace Greenfield because you won't understand her?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
I more than understand her. I represent plenty of women, along with men. Interestingly, I've had women over the years specifically retain me, knowing I won't let them do things to hurt the father of their kids just out of bitterness. And that I always feel very
ethics? Morals?
Well,
ethics and morals are two different things.
Wait a second. If you're talking legal ethics and morals, yeah. If you're talking socially,
right.
There are those that would say otherwise about me. I'm just kidding. But
But you do. I mean, you care about the children.
I care about the
regardless of who's
children.
coming
I tell
into
my
you.
own clients, if you're going to tell me that the best interest of your kid is really paramount, and I'm going to tell you when you're not doing it like that, and you're going to be grateful for it if your kid's best interest is really in your heart. And if you're going to get upset when I tell you this, I'm going to know you're interested more in your own interest than your child or children's best interest.
Right.
It's one of the reasons why I tell people, point blank, that what you're fighting over isn't worth the litigation costs, because I can keep my head high that I didn't, cause you to be broke. And usually those people, even if they don't change lawyers to hire me, refer me a lot of other people.
Right.
Because I will tell the blunt, honest truth, and I'm not going to just look to do things to get more and more of your money.
Right.
And you got to remember, there are those that say, but law is a profession and it should be above that. Let's be a little more realistic. It's also a business.
Right, of course. You have rent to pay. You have a house. You have to feed your kids. So,
And-
it is a business.
And there are aspects of it where lawyers, say that they're going to put the money in some lawyer's pocket, might as well be my pocket. There are lawyers that say, it's not sanctionable or frivolous, why not? And I'm like, because you're going to lose.
Right.
So why take the client's money? But you never know what could happen. Yeah, you never know
That's
what
true.
could happen, but, let people go on with more money in their pocket to heal, get their lives going. The sooner it's over and the less it costs, the better you get on with your life, the
And the
better
kids-
you
the
recover,
kids do better.
and the kids do better, and you can emotionally and psychologically heal better, and when you do, your kids flourish more.
Now, you say a divorce shouldn't take more than 6 months, give or take a month or two. But almost everybody I know, including me, who was in court for 14 years, will tell you that the divorce will go on forever. Explain why you say it should take 6 months. And, isn't it out of your control sometimes? If one person doesn't want it to be over, it takes two to negotiate.
You make many good, valid points, and I'm glad you asked me that question. In my mind, no divorce should take longer than 6 months to be settled or ready for trial. But there are those that get a great pendente lite order, receiving more in money than they would get on a final divorce, so they want it to go on longer and longer and longer. You also have lawyers that take more cases than they can handle to give the attention to get it over with. You have court parts that are, you got to remember, judges are lawyers, they're not business people, so efficiency is often lacking. And, sometimes the courts can't accommodate it because they have too many cases. Sometimes your evaluators have too many cases. And I limit the number of cases that I take so that I can give the attention, I can get things done. I limit it a lot more than needed, only because if I take too many cases, I'm going to just be...
Right, so you can focus on the cases that you
And I can keep my blood pressure down.
Right. Well, Mace, thank you very much. I appreciate it. And thank you for everything that you do, because what we didn't get to is the fact that you've also been an advocate for family law reform. And even though it could put you out of business, I think you would be happy as anybody out there if there was no need to fight lawyers in court anymore. And I really do appreciate everything you do for families and for children. Ladies and gentlemen, Mace Greenfield, you can reach him at the bottom number on your screen, or at his website, Google Mace Greenfield.
www.macenylaw.com.
It's springtime in the forest of the black-tailed deer. The young male is feeling playful. It's time for tag. The female flicks her ears, her way of saying, "Catch me if you can."
All over America, people are taking the National Radon Test. Have you?
You put me on the spot.
Have you heard of radon?
I never thought about it. I don't know.
I think it's a secret killer or a silent killer.
Poison gas that seeps into the house.
It's one of the tests we did with the inspector before buying the home.
Why worry about it?
Why worry? Take the National Radon Test. True or false? Radon is the second leading cause of lung cancer.
True. I'd say false.
No, it's true.
I thought of cigarettes and then pollution.
That's something new to me.
Radon can penetrate a concrete block.
It's false.
False?
False?
It's true.
I wouldn't know how they could protect you from that.
It's scary.
The Office of the Surgeon General recommends all homes be tested for radon.
False?
It's true.
True?
I should know about it because I worked in the hospital for many years.
So that's bad. We should get our house tested.
Sure, I'm gonna call it.
1-800-SOS-RADON. How can you not call?
1-800-SOS-RADON.
R-A-D-O-N.
You'd never know it on the battlefield. But nearly half of today's military are National Guard and reservists. However, they can't answer our nation's call without their employer's support. If you're an employer, visit esgr.org and find out how to do your part. After all, their response depends on yours.
One day these rats were playing in the woods. Wanted some matches and that's no good. Listen to smoke before you give it a try.
Only you.
Don't play with matches. Don't play with fire. Cause there's nothing very funny about nothing very nice on a homeless mind. So if a gorgeous force is what you desire, don't play with matches. Don't play with fire.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
Fire.